Hello boys, I hope you are all well. This is the first video for the memo of task 6.12. I will record more than one video because it was such a long exercise. And in this video, I am going to deal with the accounting equation of COVID budget stores. So if we go and look at the transactions for July 2007, the first transaction took place on the 5th. It said that Y Shelley's account of 800 Rand has been overdue for 3 months, and you must charge her 40 Rand interest on the overdue amount. Okay, so this transaction is a general journal transaction because we are charging interest on a debtor's account and we will issue a journal voucher. Luckily for you, they gave you the interest value, so you didn't have to calculate it. And let's see how it affects the accounting equation. This numbers column in the beginning is for the date of the transaction. It was the 5th. The document would be a journal voucher. The journal will be the general journal. Now remember, if we charge a debtor with interest on their account, we debit debtors control because they owe us even more money. So debtors control is the debit account, and then the account that will be credited is an income account called interest on overdue debtors. Now something that I quickly want to draw your attention to is that I want you to classify your accounts in brackets like I did here and here. The reason why I want you to do that, and if it's income or expense, I want you to say owner's equity income, owner's equity expense, is because it helps you to complete these 3 columns. And I've realized with some experience of teaching Form 3s that these 3 columns are the ones that you really struggle with. Another tip that I want to give you is I want you to highlight this line. Can you see I made mine like a bright red between assets and owner's equity, because this line will represent your equal sign, and that you know whatever is on this side of the line or the left-hand side of the line must equal what is on the right-hand side of the line. Okay, then another tip is with owner's equity, because this is the one that you guys usually get confused with. Owner's equity can increase or decrease, and the easiest way to remember when owner's equity will increase or decrease is by looking at where owner's equity is affected here. If an owner's equity account is debited, then owner's equity will be a minus. And if an owner's equity account is credited, then owner's equity will be a plus. Okay, so if we look at the effect of this transaction on our accounting equation, you will see an asset was debited, so assets increase with the 40 Rand. Remember, we're dealing with the interest part. And an owner's equity account was credited, so owner's equity also increased. Plus 40 equals plus 40. Then the next transaction, it says on the 9th, stock sold on credit to S. Strew for 500 Rand was correctly entered in the relevant journal. In other words, the debtor's journal is perfect, but was posted incorrectly to the account of S. Straw. So our accountant made an error. Our accountant debited S. Straw instead of debiting S. Strew. To fix this, we will go to the general journal. So this transaction on the 9th would also get a journal voucher in the general journal. You have to go and debit the debtors control account of S. Strew because that's the debtor that actually bought the stuff from us. And you have to go and credit S. Straw because S. Straw was incorrectly debited. Very important is that you have to write the debtors' names, because if you just write debtors control, it's quite confusing. And as you can see, both of them are assets, so the movement represents a plus minus in assets, and plus 500 minus 500 equals 0. Okay, you don't have to make your zeros. If it's blank, we assume that you mean for it to be 0. Then the next transaction on the 14th said, Y Shelley settled her account by check. The owner decided to grant her usual discount of 2.5%. Okay, so if you look at your task 6.12 in your textbook, you will notice that they didn't give you the opening balances of accounts. But if you look on the 5th, they gave you all of the information that you needed. It said that Y Shelley's account of 800 Rand was overdue, and then we charged her 40 Rand interest. So Y Shelley actually owed us 840 Rand. Okay, so she's settling her account. In other words, at the end of the day, she's not going to owe us anything but we are giving a 2.5% discount. Okay, so to go and calculate the discount allowed value is you will say 840 multiplied by 2.5%, okay, is we will give her 21 Rand discount, and therefore she will pay us 840 minus 21. She will pay us 819 Rand, and the rest will be discount. This transaction will go to the CRJ. Remember, it's not a general journal transaction. It's a CRJ transaction. So let's go and look at the general journal. The accounting equation. The transaction took place on the 14th. It's a CRJ transaction, so we will give her a duplicate receipt. They didn't say how she paid us, so then you must just assume it's a duplicate receipt in the CRJ. So let's deal with the part that she's actually paying us first. Okay, so bank will be debited because we are receiving money from her. And her account will be credited because she's paying us back, so debtors control decreases. The value that she's actually paying was that 819 Rand. So our asset bank, well, both of them are assets, so it will be plus minus 819 in assets. Then the discount allowed portion, the reason why there are two lines is because discount allowed is recorded separately, will be the account that is debited is discount allowed, which is an expense account. And the account that is credited will also be debtors control of Y Shelley. Okay, so her account decreases because we are giving her discount. Now, because an asset is credited, our assets decrease with 21 Rand. And because an owner's equity account is debited, owner's equity also decrease with 21 Rand. And can you see 21 equals 21? Minus 21 equals minus 21. So it helps if you classify your account and if you draw that thick line. If a debtor pay us and we give them discount, it will always look like this. It will always have two lines for the one transaction. Remember that. Record the amount that they actually pay us and the discount amount separately. Then let's look at the next transaction that took place on the 16th. Merchandise, which is just a synonym for trading stock or trading inventory, sold to Y Shelley for 200 Rand was wrongly posted to the account of Y Shallow. Okay, so once again, we debited the wrong debtor. We debited Y Shallow. We should have debited Y Shelley. This error must be corrected in the general journal. Okay, so the transaction took place on the 16th. We will issue a journal voucher for it in the general journal. The account that will be debited is Y Shelley's account because she's the person that bought the merchandise from us. Okay, so go and debit Y Shelley and then go and credit Y Shallow because Y Shallow was incorrectly debited. You must write the names of the debtors, and because both of these accounts are assets, it's a plus minus in assets. Plus minus 200 equals 0. Then if you look at the next transaction, so on the 17th, the bank informed us, just want this to work, the bank informed us that Y Shelley's check, which was received on the 14th, had been dishonored due to insufficient funds. Okay, so in other words, this entire transaction must be cancelled. Okay, so I'm going to take you back to the accounting equation because it's easier to see here. We must cancel everything. This part, the part that we actually received from Y Shelley, the 819 Rand, will be cancelled in the CPJ. Okay, that's something that you are familiar with, a dishonored check in the CPJ. And now this part is the new part. The discount allowed value will be actually cancelled in the general journal. Okay, so let's deal with the CPJ part first. It's on the 17th. Bank statement is the document for a dishonored check, always in the CPJ. The account that will be debited is debtors control. We thought she paid us, but she didn't actually pay us, so we increase her account again. Debtors control Y Shelley. And the account that will be credited is bank, because unfortunately we debited bank here thinking that we received money, but we didn't. So to reverse that debit, you actually go and credit bank. And the value is now still plus minus 819 in assets. So you can see it's just the opposite of this transaction here. You just swap your debits and your credits. Then the discount will be cancelled in the general journal. So we will issue a journal voucher in the general journal. The account that will be debited is debtors control. We're taking away this discount from her. She doesn't deserve it because her check got dishonored. Okay, so debit debtors control and credit discount allowed. It's very weird that our expense is being credited, but the reason why is because we are reversing this debit in discount allowed that we have made before. Okay, so this is actually reversing that. And now because an asset is debited, it's plus 21 in assets. And because an owner's equity account is credited, it's plus 21 in owner's equity. Okay, so plus 21 equals plus 21. And you will see that this is just the reversal of this. Okay, it's actually easy if you do the accounting equation to see this. It illustrates it nicely. Then on the 19th, stationery purchased on credit from Nasville and Company for 397 Rand was entered in the relevant journal as 937 Rand. This error must be corrected. Okay, so this is quite a big error. We credited creditors control with 937 Rand and debited stationery with 937 Rand, where we should only have credited and debited with 397 Rand. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go and calculate the difference. 937, I think that's what the transaction said, yes, minus 397 is 540. Okay, so this difference must now be dealt with as such. This is an error that will be fixed in the general journal. Okay, so on the 19th, journal voucher, general journal. We credited creditors control with too much. So we have to go and debit creditors control to take that 540 Rand out. That shouldn't be in there. And we debited stationery with too much. So we have to go and credit stationery to take that 540 out. In this case, assets will not be affected. Can you see? Because there is no asset account in this line or in this transaction. Owner's equity is credited. Okay, so our owner's equity will actually be a plus because it's credited. And liabilities are debited. And liabilities increase on the credit side, decrease on the debit side. So our liabilities will be a minus. And if you look at it, 0, because this actually implies that it's 0, 0 equals plus 540 minus 540. The sum of this is 0. Okay, next transaction. Let's look. On the 20th, the owner, Jimmy Corbett, made the following withdrawals. Okay, so the owner made a few withdrawals. Sorry, this thing is just freaking out. Okay, the owner made a few withdrawals, all of them on the 20th, and all of them must be recorded separately in the accounting equation. The first one is he took trading stock at 400 Rand and the cost price was 320 Rand. Now remember, we always deal with the cost price of stock if the owner takes stock for himself. This will be in the general journal. So let's go here. It's on the 20th. We will give a journal voucher in the general journal. The account that will be debited is drawings, owner's equity. The account that will be credited is trading stock because the owner takes some of the stock for himself. It's an asset. And then because an asset is credited, you say minus 320. Remember to work with the cost price. And because owner's equity is debited, you say minus 320. Then the owner also took stationery for 48 Rand. Okay, so if the owner takes stationery, then we will go and debit drawings and we will credit stationery. Why do we credit stationery? Because there's now less stationery in our business. And it's actually not an expense for us anymore because the owner takes that expense to his personal finances. Okay, now because an asset is not affected, there's no movement in assets. But can you see both of these accounts are owner's equity accounts? So there's a plus and a minus in owner's equity. This very rarely happens, but it can happen. Okay, and then lastly, let's go and look. The owner also took a check for 800 Rand to pay for his daughter's school field trip. Now, this is the original drawings that you are very familiar with. If the owner takes money or a check, it will be in the CPJ, and the source document for the CPJ is check counterfoil. Okay, so CPJ, the account that will be debited is drawings, and the account that will be credited is bank. You are very familiar with this. Because an asset is credited, it's minus 800 in assets, and because an owner's equity account is debited, it's minus 800 in owner's equity as well. Then on the 21st, the photocopier machine was repaired by Salmid Technology at a total cost of 646 Rand. The amount was posted to the equipment account. This error must be corrected. I hope that you, with your very smart Form 3 accounting brain, can recognize this error. The thing that's wrong here is that equipment shouldn't have been debited. Anytime when we repair any type of asset, we must debit repairs. Okay, so to fix this, we must go and credit equipment, debit repairs, and this will be done in the general journal. So it's on the 21st, journal voucher, general journal, debit repairs, which is an owner's equity expense, credit equipment, which is an asset. Because equipment was credited, it's minus in assets, and because owner's equity was debited, it's minus in owner's equity. As easy as that. Then on the 24th, Corvid Budget Stores, this is us, our business, was informed that Y Shelley had been declared insolvent. Okay, so Y Shelley is declared insolvent. Her estate paid 40 cents in the rand. The balance of her account must be written off. Okay, but now be careful. She owed us 840 Rand, and then she settled the whole thing, but her check got dishonored. But I want you to also quickly just look again at the 16th. We sold another 200 Rand of merchandise to Y Shelley. So the total value of her account that must be written off is 840 plus 200 Rand, is 1,040. That's the total value that must be written off. Then it says here that her estate paid 40 cents in the rand. Okay, so there will be two legs to this transaction. 40 cents of this, or 40% basically, will be received from us and will be recorded in the CRJ. Let's go and deal with that part first. So you multiply the value that she owes us with 40 over 100, because 40 cents is 40 over 100. So 460 Rand is actually received from Y Shelley. This will go to the CRJ. Okay, so it's on the 24th. We will issue a duplicate receipt in the CRJ. Bank will be debited because we are receiving money. Debtors control Y Shelley will be credited. And because both of them are assets, it's plus minus in assets for that 416 Rand. Then the rest, okay? So you say 1,040 minus 460. The 624 that's remaining, the other 60 cents in the rand of her account will be written off as bad debts. And we do this in the general journal. So we will issue a journal voucher in the general journal. The account that will be debited is an expense account called bad debts. And the account that will be credited is debtors control Y Shelley. And because an asset is credited, it's minus in assets. And because owner's equity is debited, it's minus in owner's equity. Okay, then we're almost done. Two last transactions. On the 28th, it says the account of NCD, who owed 230 Rand, was written off 3 months ago as he could not be traced. He reappeared on this day and settled the amount due. Now, this is one of the transactions that we haven't dealt with in the past. Okay, so what happened, let me just highlight this. I'm going to stop there. What happened is NCD owed us 230 Rand. And this data was actually written off 3 months ago. So we wrote the 230 Rand off as an expense. We completely took him out of debtors control. And we debited bad debts. Okay, now magically he reappears and he settles the amount due. Okay, so this will be a CRJ transaction because he's paying us 230 Rand. It will not affect debtors control because NCD is not a debtor anymore. He was written off. He was taken out of debtors control. The account that will be affected, bank will be debited because we are receiving money, but the other account will be an income account that you've never heard of before called bad debts recovered. Okay, so what this means is it's bad debts that was previously written off is actually now recovered. Okay, so let's go and look at this. It's on the 28th. We will issue a duplicate receipt in the CRJ. Bank, which is an asset, is debited. Bad debts recovered is an income account, owner's equity income that is credited. Because an asset is debited, you plus in assets, and because an owner's equity account is credited, it increases owner's equity. Okay, I hope you took note of that one. Then the last one, a discount was received from wrap dealers, 45 Rand. It was incorrectly recorded as 54 Rand in the CPJ and posted as such. Okay, so we made a little bit of a mistake. When we receive discount from a creditor, usually we debit creditors control and we credit discount received, which is an income account. But now we recorded 54 Rand instead of 45 Rand. So we actually recorded 9 Rand. Let me just see if it's 9 Rand. 54 minus 45. Yes, 9 Rand discount too much. That doesn't make sense, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, so you have to go and fix that 9 Rand. We debited creditors control with 9 Rand too much, and we credited discount received with 9 Rand too much. So to fix it, you'll do it in the general journal, issuing a journal voucher. You have to go and debit discount received because you actually over-credited it. Credit creditors control because you over-debited it. And then it won't affect assets at all because an owner's equity account is debited, it's minus in owner's equity. And because creditors control is credited, that's a side where it increase, it's plus in liabilities.